I'm Jennifer Knickerbocker. I belong to the Anishinaabe people. I'm a citizen of White Earth Nation. I am Anishinaabe Key, which is what we call the feminine. She, her are my pronouns. I'm also a board member of the Greater Cincinnati Native American Coalition. I'm going to talk to you about missing and murdered Indigenous women. So, Indigenous women across the globe endure racism, sexism, gender violence at the greatest levels, and yet are able to reach deep and combat these violations of our bodies and our minds with some of the most comprehensive and inclusive rights battles on the planet. I am here to say that there is hope, that we are together, and that we can fight. And without our leadership, which is grounded in our vast traditional knowledge, we have little chance to mount the fights that we need. So if you are Native, Indigenous, American Indian, Aboriginal, please stand with me. Stand. We are resilient, and we can't do it alone. Everybody else who is here to stand with Native people, stand now too. We are together, and we are going to do this together. So, missing and murdered Indigenous women, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit. 4 out of 5 Indigenous women are affected by violence today. So here's some statistics for you. The U.S. Department of Justice found that American Indian women face murder rates at more than 10 times the national average. Homicide is the 3rd leading cause of death among 10 to 24-year-olds, and the 5th leading cause of death for Native women between 25 and 34. Homicide being the 3rd leading cause of death among 10 to 24-year-olds. I do not know an Indigenous person where this has not affected their lives. This is why I wear red today, actually, in remembrance of our stolen sisters. Here in Ohio, we have over 104,000 people identify as at least partially Native American. Okay, so there's a lot of us here. Also in Ohio, 65% of all murders of Native Americans go unreported to the FBI. That is astounding. 67% of rapes suffered by Native women are committed by non-Natives. Some say, when they talk about this issue, that this is a Native-on-Native problem, or that it's a problem with our reservations, or that it's a problem just for our people, but that is not true. 80% of sex crimes on reservations are committed by non-Natives. Why? It's the ongoing attempt of genocide of Indigenous women. Cases go unreported, it's allowed, it's institutional racism. A disproportionate rate of assault to Indigenous women is due to a wide variety of causes, but all the foundational is because of genocide. Actually, there are places in the world who have named this as genocide. We're not there yet in this country, but I hope that we do. We can start by naming it in our communities. It's the 2nd fewest Native Americans per capita, right behind West Virginia. And at the same time, Ohio has a problem with mascots. It has more mascots per capita in school buildings and in public institutions than any other state in the country. It is despicable. And the way that we are portrayed in the media, women in particular, over-sexualized, fetishized, it contributes to the violence against women. It makes us targets. It is up to us to say, as Native people, to say stop. So if you've heard of Savannah's Act, Her story was incredibly tragic, and I don't want to trigger anybody, and so I'll just say that she was a woman from Fargo, and she was murdered in 2017, and her baby was cut from her womb, and her body was dumped in a river. And because of her story, there is a new initiative to spend $1.5 million for law enforcement to help coordinate Native American missing persons cases across the United States. So this was kind of a joint political effort to understand the numbers more deeply. And this is another reason why Native people are targets, because we are not tracking the numbers. Native people are disenfranchised from having the ability to track the numbers. And then also there are a number of people who are on the dark web who network together as men and who attack Native women because they know they can't be prosecuted for that. There's also man camps, environmental racism. Anytime there is a pipeline coming through, like Enbridge from my reservation up at White Earth, to any number of pipelines, they set up these man camps, and then they let them go and track down women and children and steal them, and it's traumatic. So here's some data. The Urban Indian Health Institute, I got a chance to speak with the executive director there this last summer. Her name is Abigail Echohawk, and she's been doing tremendous work in putting together data on missing and murdered Indigenous women. If you look at the median age of the women are 29 years old, so it's young women in the primes of their lives. There's currently no real accountability system, even though we now have Savannah's Act. We have really huge gaps in being able to actually track who is being targeted. So, for an example, the 5,712 known cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women, only 116 were logged, which is too small. And let's think about this. Savannah's Act helped with what's going on reservations, but 71% of Native people live off reservations. We live off reservations because we went out to work, or we went out to school, or there was the huge 60s scoop that took children from their homes and displaced them. There was a prophecy from my tribe that I was told when I was young, and it was the prophecy of the circle. And it said that we would be, as a people, we would be going out into the world, and we would be moving further and further away from our Ojibwe teachings and our language and our instructions. And we would be out there and vulnerable, and many of us will die, and many of us will be lost. But we are coming toward a time when we are coming to close the circle, and we are coming back to our ways. We are coming back to our traditions. We are going to close the circle, but this time we're not alone. Because what we know is that the longer and the more generations that are on this land, our DNA actually changes to become part of this land too. And so many of the settlers who came here, many of the people who experienced extractive colonialism and were taken from homelands and are now here against their generational will, this land is yours too. This land belongs to you too. But we must come together. We must close the circle together. I didn't have a slide for that. That was just something that came. So over 95% of cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls were never covered by the national or international media. That's why we had to have a hashtag. We had to let people know what was happening to our sisters. And that is what we need from you. First of all, decolonize. Know whose land this is. Because the truth is, you have to flip what you know about the land. When colonialism came here, it said the land belongs to us now. And they put up fences, and they put up buildings, and they put up things that didn't belong in nature and that weren't in harmony. Because what they understood was ownership. But what's true is that the land longs for its people. Okay, so flip your idea. The land doesn't belong to us. We belong to the land.
Great.
I also want you to amplify the voices of women like Lisa today, who shared her story, her 2 stories of missing and murdered Indigenous women. Her story needs to be told, and not to traumatize her over and over again and make her the one that has to say it, but now you know, and as they say, you cannot unring that bell. You know it, you have to do it for her now. And then you have to help hold all governments accountable. There is some money now to start tracking the data, but we haven't even begun here in Ohio. So you can join us at the GCNAC because we are doing something really special here in Cincinnati. If you've seen red dresses around, the red dress is to symbolize missing and murdered Indigenous women. It's to remember the 65% of all murders of Indigenous people that went unreported just here in Ohio alone. Missing and murdered, and actually all Indigenous women, all Black and brown women deserve better. In Ohio, there's issues of trafficking, and nobody deserves to go missing. So on May 5th is a national call to action for missing and murdered Indigenous women. We want to encourage you to wear red. We want to encourage you to contact the GCNAC to see what we're doing, because we need all voices, and we need you to close the circle and stand with us. So part of the way that we're doing this event is that we are telling some personal stories too after we give you some data. And I've had some hard things happen in my life in the past few days, and so I don't know if I can make it through saying some sad things, but what I can share with you is that this is my beautiful niece, Tatum. It's okay, thank you. Tatum went missing in 2009 from the Warm Springs Reservation, and even from the very beginning, nobody did anything and nobody had a clue. And because of various reasons, one of her parents is locked up. You know, when you feel this sense of urgency, when your child goes missing, your life goes into chaos, it's like a domino effect. And I saw it in my own family, and I know that other Native people
We're with you.
I know other people feel it too. So that's all that I have for you today. And thank you so much for coming out here, for listening, for understanding, for being with these other beautiful women on International Women's Day. and we hope you join us.
We love you. We love you.
All the missing and murdering around the world. Oh, hey,